Laura. At this stage, I can offer nothing more than my word. I am a senior government employee in the intelligence community. I hope you understand that contacting you is extremely high risk, and you are willing to agree to the following precautions before I share more. This will not be a waste of your time. The following sounds complex, but should only take minutes to complete for someone technical. I would like to confirm out of email that the keys we exchanged were not intercepted and replaced by your surveillance. Please confirm that no one has ever had a copy of your private key and that it uses a strong passphrase. Assume your adversary is capable of 1 trillion guesses per second. If the device you store the private key and enter your passphrase on has been hacked, it is trivial to decrypt our communications. Understand that the above steps are not bulletproof and are intended only to give us breathing room. In the end, if you publish the source material, I will likely be immediately implicated. This must not deter you from releasing the information I will provide. Thank you, and be careful. Citizenfour.
That's right, and this is all about creating an independent record. To me, this goes to the question of independently verifying what the government is doing. That's why I keep going back to that question.
More with David Sirota after CBS News Traffic and Weather on KKZF Fortune Denver Boulder AM 7.
Hey, can you hear me? I am here, David. How are you? Well, I would just start by pointing to what Barack Obama himself said about those questions when he was running for the office that he now occupies in December of 2007. He said, quote, "The president does not have the power under the Constitution to unilaterally authorize a military attack in a situation that does not involve stopping an actual or imminent threat to the nation." So by Obama's own words, the president does not have the power that he's now exercising under the Constitution. And as far as why it matters, on August 1st, 2007, when he laid out his reasons why he was running for office and why he thought it was so important to change the way we were doing things, he said, quote, "No more ignoring the law when it's inconvenient. That is not who we are. We will again set an example for the world that the law is not subject to the whims of stubborn rulers." So to allow presidents to simply start wars on their own without any...
You asked why I picked you. I didn't. You did. The surveillance you've experienced means you've been selected, a term which will mean more to you as you learn about how the modern SIGINT system works. For now, know that every border you cross, every purchase you make, every call you dial, every cell phone tower you pass, friend you keep, article you write, site you visit, subject line you type, and packet you route is in the hands of a system whose reach is unlimited, but whose safeguards are not. Your victimization by the NSA system means that you are well aware of the threat that unrestricted, secret police pose for democracies. This is a story few but you can tell.
Thank you for inviting me here to give me the opportunity to express my story. But let me give you some of my background. I spent about 4 years in the military, and then I went into NSA directly. So I ended up with about 37 years of service combined. Most of it was a lot of fun, I tell you. It was really a lot of fun breaking these puzzles, solving problems and things like that. And that's really what I did. I fundamentally started working out with data, looking at data and data systems and how you do that. I was developing this concept of analysis that you could lay it out in such a way that it could be coded and executed electronically, meaning you could automate analysis, okay? And it has to do with metadata and using metadata relationships. So that was my whole theme there at NSA. Eventually that's what I ended up to. I was the only one there doing that, by the way. So at any rate, 9/11 happened, and it must have been right after, a few days, no more than a week after 9/11, that they had decided to begin actively spying on everyone in this country. And they wanted that back part of our program to run all the spying, all right? So that's exactly what they did. And then he started taking the telecom data and it expanded after that. So, I mean, the one I knew was AT&T, and that one provided 320 million records every day. That program was reauthorized every 45 days by what I called the Yes Committee, which was Hayden and Tennant and the DOJ. The program was called Stellar Wind. So first I went to the House Intelligence Committee and the staff member that I personally knew there, and she then went to the chairman of that committee, Nancy Pelosi, who was the minority rep. They were all briefed into the program at the time, by the way, and all the other programs that were going on, including all these CIA programs. I wasn't alone in this. There were 4 others out of NSA, and we were all trying to work internally in the government over these years, trying to get them to come around to being constitutionally acceptable and take it into the courts and have the courts oversight of it too. So we naively kept thinking that could happen, and it never did. But at any rate, after that and all the stuff we were doing, they decided to raid us to keep us quiet, threaten us, So we were raided simultaneously, 4 of us. In my case, they came in with guns drawn. I don't know why they did that, but they did, so.
Laura, I will answer what I remember of your questions as best I can. Forgive the lack of structure. I am not a writer, and I have to draft this in a great hurry. What you know as Stellar Wind has grown. SSO, the expanded special source operations that took over Stellar Wind's share of the pie, has spread all over the world to practically include comprehensive coverage of the United States. Disturbingly, the amount of U.S. communication ingested by NSA is still increasing. Public complain that things are going dark, but in fact our accesses are improving. The truth is that the NSA has never in its history collected more than it does now. I know the location of most domestic interception points, and that the largest telecommunication companies in the U.S. are betraying the trust of their customers, which I can prove. We are building the greatest weapon for oppression in the history of man, yet its directors exempt themselves from accountability. NSA Director Keith Alexander lied to Congress, which I can prove. Billions of U.S. communications are being intercepted. In gathering evidence of wrongdoing, I focused on the wronging of the American people, but believe me when I say that the surveillance we live under is the highest privilege compared to how we treat the rest of the world. This I can also prove. On cyber operations, the government's public position is that we still lack a policy framework. This too is a lie. There is a detailed policy framework, a kind of martial law for cyber operations created by the White House. It's called Presidential Policy Directive 20 and was finalized at the end of last year. This I can also prove. I appreciate your concern for my safety, but I already know how this will end for me, and I accept the risk. If I have luck and you are careful, You will have everything you need. I ask only that you ensure this information makes it home to the American public.
Does the NSA routinely intercept American citizens' emails?
No.
Does the NSA intercept Americans' cell phone conversations?
No.
Google searches?
No.
Text messages?
No.
Amazon.com orders?
No.
Bank records?
No.
What judicial consent is required for NSA to intercept communications and information involving American citizens?
Within the United States, that would be the FBI lead. If it was a foreign actor in the United States, the FBI would still have the lead and could work that with NSA or other intelligence agencies as authorized. But to conduct that kind of collection in the United States, it would have to go through a court order, and the court would have to authorize it. We are not authorized to do it, nor do we do it.
All rise. The United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit is now in session. Please be seated.
Good morning and welcome to the Ninth Circuit. The first case for argument is Jewell versus National Security Agency. You may proceed.
May it please the court, Kevin Bankston for Carolyn Jewell and her fellow plaintiff appellants in Jewell v. NSA. Your honors, plaintiffs have specifically alleged that their own communications and communications records have been acquired by the government. But the district court found that we had failed to allege facts that differentiated the injury that our plaintiffs suffered from the injury suffered by every other AT&T user whose communications and records have been acquired by the government, basically concluding that so long as everyone is being surveilled, no one has standing to sue. However, to deny standing to persons who are injured simply because many others are also injured would mean that the most injurious and widespread government actions could be questioned by nobody.
Do you have anything concrete that, in fact, a specific communication of your client was intercepted?
We have evidence that all of the communications passing between AT&T's network and other networks in their Northern California facility have been intercepted, and so that would necessarily include the internet communications of our Northern California plaintiffs. So,
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
May it please the court, I'm Thomas Byron from the Department of Justice, here on behalf of the government defendants. We think this litigation need not be resolved in federal court in light of the oversight of the political branches, both legislative and executive, which provides a better opportunity for oversight and resolution of the concerns raised concerning nationwide policies of alleged surveillance in these complaints.
Even if it's revealed that one or more of the plaintiffs had email or telephone conversations intercepted that had nothing to do with national security?
Your Honor, I don't know that anyone necessarily would have standing to raise the particular claims at issue in these two cases. We think instead that the kinds of claims at issue here against these defendants are those that are better suited to resolution before the representative branches of our government.
So what rule would the judiciary have if your approach is adopted?
Judge Ferguson, I think that
I mean, we just get out of the way, is that it?
Well, Judge Ferguson, I think that there is a narrow category, a subset of cases in which it may be appropriate to step aside for that narrow category of cases.
But the judiciary plays a role.
To be sure, Judge Ferguson.
In our system.
Yes, Your Honor. And we don't mean to diminish that.
You're asking us to abdicate that role.
No, Your Honor, but it is a question of this court's discretion whether to reach that issue. We do think that there is simply no way for the litigation to proceed without risk of divulging those very questions of privileged information that would cause, as the Director of National Intelligence has explained, exceptionally grave damage to national security if disclosed.
Thanks for having me. If anybody has any questions, like I said, just raise your hand, and I'll try to call on you as soon as I possibly can. So, who here actually feels like they are under surveillance pretty regularly?
Anyone occupiers, no?
Everyone inside of Occupy. How many people here have been arrested and at their court date, they had their phone taken into the back room? How many people here had their retina scanned? Wow. So you guys are actually, in a sense, the canaries in the coal mine, right? Because the incentives are all lined up against you. Anybody see on the subway, link your Metro card to your debit card, right? And like auto refill? This is a concept which is key to everything we'll talk about today, and it's called linkability. Take one piece of data and link it to another piece of data. So for example, if you have your Metro card and you have your debit card, you have those things and you can draw a line between them, right? So that's like not a scary thing, except your bank card is tied to everything else that you do during the day. So now they know where you're going, when you make purchases. So when they decide to target you, they can actually recreate your exact steps with a Metro card and with the credit card alone. Like literally where you go and what you buy. And potentially, by linking that data with other people on similar travel plans, they can figure out who you talked to and who you met with. When you then take cell phone data, which logs your location, and you link up purchasing data, Metro card data, and your debit card, you start to get what you could call metadata in aggregate over a person's life. And metadata in aggregate is content. It tells a story about you, which is made up of facts, but is not necessarily true. So for example, just because you were on the corner and all those data points point to it, it doesn't mean you committed the crime. So it's important to note that if someone has a perception of you having done a thing, it will now follow you for the rest of your life. So just keep in mind that what happens to you guys, for example, with fingerprints and retinal scans and photographs, that is what is going to happen to people in the future when they resist policy changes and when they try to protest in a totally constitutionally protected way.
This for you, Director Clapper, again on the surveillance front, and I hope we can do this in just a yes or no answer because I know Senator Feinstein wants to move on. So does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not?
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
The encrypted archive should be available to you within 7 days. The key will follow when everything else is done. The material I provide and investigative effort required will be too much for any one person. I recommend, at a very minimum, you involve Glenn Greenwald. I believe you know him. The plain text of the payload will include my true name details for the record, though it will be your decision as to whether or how to declare my involvement. My personal desire is that you paint the target directly on my back. No one, not even my most trusted confidant, is aware of my intentions, and it would not be fair for them to fall under suspicion for my actions. You may be the only one who can prevent that, and that is by immediately nailing me to the cross, rather than trying to protect me as a source. On timing regarding meeting up in Hong Kong. The first rendezvous attempt will be at 10 a.m. local time on Monday. We will meet in the hallway outside of a restaurant in the Mirror Hotel. I will be working on a Rubik's Cube so you can identify me. Approach me and ask if I know the hours of the restaurant. I'll respond by stating that I'm not sure and suggest you try the lounge instead. I'll offer to show you where it is, and at that point, we're good. You simply need to follow naturally.
As far as positioning, I mean, if you want us to sit in any particular way or whatever.
You know, I'm gonna go there because I get better light. I just want to know where the first place is.
So there's so many different enormous stories just that are kind of standalone stories that even certain things about an individual document that can just be their own story. And I just want to start churning those stories out. I basically woke up this morning and already started writing stories. So I'm hoping to, start publishing within a day or 2 days.
Okay.
As long as you're good with that.
Yeah.
And so as far as the stuff we have to talk about, I mean, I'm kind of dichotomizing it between, stuff that I'd like to talk to you about in terms of the documents and the content, and Laura has a bunch of questions about that as well. Sort of while working through the documents, getting your take on a lot of this stuff that, will help me understand it better. But then also the sort of you story, right? The who you are, why, what you've done, why you've done what you've done.
Yeah.
And I'd love to do that first.
Okay.
In part because you're the only one who could do that. So I'd like to just get it done so that it's done. And also because, it might be that you want to do that early because it might be necessary, or we might choose to have that done early. Tell me your thoughts on just where you are with that.
The primary one on that, and I think I've expressed it a couple times online, is I feel the modern media has a big focus on personalities.
Totally.
And I'm a little concerned the more we focus on that, the more they're going to use that as a distraction. And I don't necessarily want that to happen, which is why I've consistently said, I'm not the story here. Nervous.
No, it's a very, very cheap pen. That's just the slightest Force Pro. Go ahead.
Anything I can do to help you guys get this out, I will do. I don't have any experience with media, with how this works. So I'm kind of learning as I go.
Right. So I just want to get a sense of why did you decide to do what you've done?
So for me, it all comes down to state power against the people's ability to meaningfully oppose that power. And I'm sitting there every day getting paid to design methods to amplify that state power. And I'm realizing that if, the policy switches that are the only thing that restrain these states were changed, you couldn't meaningfully oppose these. I mean, you would have to be the most incredibly sophisticated technical actor in existence. I mean, I'm not sure there's anybody, no matter how gifted you are, who could oppose all of the offices and all the bright people, even all the mediocre people out there with all of their tools and all their capabilities. And as I saw the promise of the Obama administration be betrayed and walked away from, and in fact actually advance the things that had been promised to be sort of curtailed and reined in and dialed back, and actually get worse, particularly drone strikes, which I also learned at NSA we could watch drone videos from our desktops. As I saw that really hardened me to action.
In real time?
In real time, yeah. It'll stream a lower quality of the video to your desktop. Typically, you'd be watching surveillance drones as opposed to actually murder drones where they're going out there to bomb somebody. But you'll have a drone that's just following somebody's house for hours and hours, and you won't know who it is because you don't have the context for that. But it's just a page where it's lists and lists of drone feeds in all these different countries under all these different code names, and you can just click on which one you want to see.
Right. But so if your self-interest is to live in a world in which there's maximum privacy, doing something that could put you into prison in which your privacy is completely destroyed is sort of the antithesis of that. How did you reach the point where that was a worthwhile calculation for you?
I remember what the internet was like before it was being watched, and there's never been anything in the history of man that's like it. I mean, you could, again, have children from one part of the world having an equal discussion where, they were sort of granted and the same respect for their ideas in conversation with experts in a field from another part of the world on any topic, anywhere, anytime, all the time. And it was free and unrestrained. And we've seen the chilling of that and the cooling of that and the changing of that model towards something in which people self-police their own views. And they literally make jokes about ending up on the list if they donate to a political cause or if they say something in a discussion. And it's become an expectation that we're being watched. Many people I've talked to have mentioned that they're careful about what they type into search engines because they know that it's being recorded. And that limits the boundaries of their intellectual exploration. And I am more willing to risk imprisonment or any other negative outcome personally than I am willing to risk the curtailment of my intellectual freedom and that of those around me whom I care for equally as I do for myself. And again, that's not to say that I'm self-sacrificing, because it gives me, I feel good in my human experience to know that I can contribute to the good of others.
Could you elaborate on that?
So, I don't know how much of the programs and the actual technical capacities everybody's talked to you about, but there's an infrastructure in place in the United States and worldwide that NSA has built in cooperation with other governments as well that intercepts basically every digital communication, every radio communication, every analog communication that it has sensors in place to detect. And with these capabilities, basically the vast majority of human and computer-to-computer communications, device-based communications, which sort of inform the relationships between humans, are automatically ingested without targeting. And that allows individuals to retroactively search your communications based on self-certifications. So, for example, if I wanted to see the content of your email or, your wife's phone calls or anything like that, all I have to do is use what's called a selector, any kind of thing in the communications chain that might uniquely or almost uniquely identify you as an individual. And I'm talking about things like email addresses, IP addresses, phone numbers, credit cards, even passwords that are unique to you that aren't used by anyone else. I can input